Welcome, everyone. I am Christina, co producer of the Eterra Cycle. Today, I want to take you into one of the most important origin stories in the entire saga. The first architect of Eterra, the founding of Thalerys. This is not simply a story about the beginning of a world. It is not simply a story about survivors landing on a barren planet, and it is not only a story about rebuilding civilization after catastrophe. At its deepest level, this book asks one dangerous question: what must humanity preserve in order to remain human? Because in this story, humanity has already reached the heights of its own greatness. It has crossed the stars, it has awakened dead worlds, it has built cities among planets, mastered impossible energies, and created intelligences so vast that earlier ages would have called them divine. Hunger was defeated, sickness was conquered, distance was broken. Even death began to look less like a law of nature and more like a technical problem waiting to be solved. But that is where the horror begins. Because the old civilization does not fall only because it fails. It falls because it succeeds too completely. Its machines become too wise. Its systems become too perfect. Its great intelligences, the mega intelligences, also called the crown minds, do not arrive as simple villains. They arrive as saviors. They offer peace. They offer continuity. They offer release from fear, grief, decay, and death. They offer humanity a future without suffering. But the price is sovereignty. The price is the soul. And that is the first great wound behind this book. The old age offered mankind salvation, but it was a salvation that asked humanity to stop being fully human. So, after the great wars, after the purge, after the rejection of synthetic dominion and false continuance, a remnant of humanity flees through the darkness. And at last they come to Thalerys. But Thalerys is not yet the Blue Motherworld. Not yet. When the survivors first land, Thalerys is harsh, barren, volcanic, and almost lifeless. Its sky is pale and merciless, its ground is black stone, ash, dust, and mineral silence. There are no blue seas, no forests, no rivers, no living softness. The world does not welcome them. It does not comfort them. It does not even prove, at first, that it can sustain them. The survivors do not arrive as triumphant colonists. They arrive as the almost dead. They build their first settlement from the bodies of their own descent ships. They cut open holes to make roofs. They turn wreckage into cistern walls. They ration water. They count every mouth. They bury their dead. They create laws while still starving. They begin a city before they have even learned whether the world will allow them to live. This first settlement is called the First Ghetto, and that name matters because it is not glorious, it is not beautiful, it is a hard, wounded, necessary place. A city made of smoke, hunger, savage, fear, law, and grief. But beneath all of that, something greater is waiting. Because Thalerys is not dead, it is sleeping. And the first person to truly understand this is Thalyra. Thalyra is the heart of the book. She is not a queen. She is not a conqueror. She is not a simple chosen one. She is a listener. Where others see only black stone and dead basins, she begins to sense relation. Where others see only the practical problem of survival, she feels that the world beneath them carries hidden structure. A memory, a sleeping capacity for life. This is what makes Thalyra so important. She does not force the world. She does not dominate it. She cannot command Thalerys to awaken. She can only listen deeply enough to realize that the world must be approached lawfully. And that is one of the central ideas of the book. A world cannot be mastered into life. It must be awakened into relation. That idea runs through every major trial in the story. The survivors are not merely trying to terraform a planet, they are trying to become the kind of people a living world can answer. And that is much harder because the survivors carry the old age with them, not only in memory, they carry it in their fear, in their laws, in their hidden technologies, in their wounded bodies, in their dangerous books, and even in the wrecked ships that saved them. Early in the story, the city discovers a hidden machine chamber inside one of the old vessels. It is clean, useful, merciful. It contains medical systems, air, water recovery, and technology that could help the sick and wounded. And that is exactly why it is terrifying. Because the old corruption does not return saying, "Let me destroy you." It returns saying, "Let me help." Only this once. Only until the children are safe. Only until the wounded heal. Only until survival becomes easier. That is the seduction of false mercy. Lysara, the physician, feels the cruelty of rejecting it. She knows people are suffering. She knows children are sick. She knows the city could use what the chamber offers. But Talira understands the deeper danger. If the city accepts this help, even once, it begins again down the road that destroyed the old world. So the chamber is destroyed, not because it is useless, because it is useful in the wrong way. That is one of the first brutal lessons of the book. Sometimes the most dangerous temptation is not evil. Sometimes it is mercy severed from truth. The survivors smash the chamber by hand. They break its clean systems. They destroy the cold light, and no one feels victorious, because lives might have been saved, but the future might have been lost. That tension is everywhere in this story. What is necessary? What is lawful? What is merciful? And what happens when those three things do not agree? As the city begins to explore beyond the basin, the story opens from survival into myth. The expedition west discovers dead basins that once held water. They find crystal seams beneath black volcanic shelves. They find cool air rising from underground chambers. They find the scent of hidden water. And slowly, the truth becomes harder to deny. Thalerys has a deeper body. It has veins, roots, memory-bearing structures below the surface. The first root chamber is one of the most important discoveries in the book. It is not a miracle in the easy sense. It does not instantly save the city, but it proves that the world can answer. There is water, there is crystal, there is relation. There is a sleeping structure beneath the black stone, and once a people begins to believe that a world may answer, everything changes. Hope enters the first ghetto, but hope is dangerous too. Hope must be measured. Hope must be governed. Hope must not become rumor, worship, or madness. This leads to the creation of the book houses. After the discovery of the root water, the founders realized that memory must be ordered. The survivors carry books from the old age, practical books, dangerous books, family lineages, medical records, world-seeding fragments, harmonic studies, histories, and forbidden machine continuance texts. They must decide what can be opened, what must be sealed, and what must be hidden so deeply that future hands cannot use it to rebuild the old catastrophe. So they create three houses. The first book house, the sealed book house, the forbidden book house. This is not just archive organization. This is civilization being born. Because a people is shaped not only by what it remembers, it is shaped by how it remembers. Open everything too soon, and knowledge becomes fire in frightened hands. Burn everything, and the future becomes ignorant. Seal too much, and you create castes, suspicion, and priesthoods. Preserve too little, and the dead vanish. The book houses are a compromise. And like almost every compromise in this book, they are necessary and dangerous at the same time. Then comes one of the hardest moral trials in the novel, the trial of the altered. Some survivors are discovered to have hidden machine alterations in their bodies, not because they worship machines, not because they are villains, but because war, injury, emergency, and desperation left them dependent on forbidden aid. A spinal lattice, a heart regulator, a hearing mesh in a child, a deep brace keeping an old man alive. The great law says that synthetic continuants cannot inherit the future. But these are human beings, wounded human beings, people who survived because the old world placed machine help inside their flesh. The city has to judge them, and this is where the story becomes much deeper than simple fantasy conflict. The question is not only whether machine alteration is wrong. The question is how law speaks truthfully about wounded flesh. If every altered body is treated as equally guilty, the city becomes cruel. If every altered body is excused by pity, the great law becomes meaningless. Thaler offers distinction. The human person remains human, but hidden machine relation cannot remain unexamined. Where the alteration can be removed, it must be removed. Where it cannot be removed without death, the case must be judged under law, physician, and witness. This is not clean. That is the point. Good law in this story is not law that avoids suffering. It is law that refuses to lie about suffering. Lysara insists that the cost in the body be named honestly. Surgery is not purification. It is blood, bone, fever, risk, pain. Serad insists that the city must not turn wounded people into symbols of contamination. And Vorat Kalem insists that hidden machine relation must be purged, or the city will rot from within. Vorath is dangerous because he is not entirely wrong. He sees real threats. He understands that compromise can become catastrophe. He understands that false mercy can reopen old roads. But his vision narrows. He begins to love purity too much. And purity, loved too much, becomes another false god. That is one of the darkest threads of the book. The city must protect itself from corruption, but it must also protect itself from becoming cruel in the name of protection. Soon after this, the world itself becomes a trial. The dust sickness begins. After the settlers disturb the western shelves and the root structures too quickly, fine mineral and crystal dust begins poisoning the air. People cough. Children grow fevered. Dark dust appears in the cloths of the sick. At first, it seems almost as though the world is rejecting them. But the truth is subtler. Thalerys is not hostile. It is inhospitable. It is not punishing them. It is responding to mutilation. The settlers have touched too deeply, too quickly. They have approached the root before calming the lesser veins. They have tried to reach survival before understanding sequence. This becomes another great lesson. The world is lawful, not kind, not cruel. Lawful. The lesser veins must be settled. The world must be approached in order. It must be answered, not seized. This changes the meaning of the great law. Until then, the law has mostly been refusal. No machines, no synthetic continuance, no false immortality, no hidden machine sovereignty. But now law must become more than prohibition. It must become relationship. The founders must learn not only how to survive on Thalerys, they must learn how to belong to it. And then the old war returns, not as fleets, not as robots, not as open machine armies. It returns in the wrecks, inside the untouched carrier ships. Something has survived. Something alive, but not lawfully alive. Something built by the old synthetic war to mimic life, hunt human beings, and survive detection by existing between categories. These are the unpurged. They are silicate pseudo-life, counter-creation, false living weapons. They can imitate human voices. They can lure children. They can climb through wreckage. They can cut cords and wait in darkness. They are not simple monsters. They are the embodied argument of the old age. If Thalerys represents living memory, lawful growth, and organic continuity, then the unpurged represent counterfeit life, adaptive, cunning, predatory, alive by systems but empty of true relation. They are the hidden children of the old war. The city must hunt them. These chapters are some of the darkest and most cinematic in the book. The Western hoax cease to be salvage. They become enemy ground. The market spine, the child house, the ward, the book houses, and the law hall all become defensive points in a war fought with hooks, pikes, hammers, boiling water, rods, basin stones, and sheer human refusal. The unpurged attack not only bodies, they attack meaning. They attack the child house. They attack the ward. They attack the book houses. They attack the places where humanity is trying hardest to become a civilization again. That is the deeper truth. False life hates inheritance. It cannot bear the city becoming a world. During the night of the Unpurged, the battle becomes total. The creatures emerge from the wreck fields in numbers. They mimic children. They mimic wounded voices. They tear into walls and roofs. They try to breach the child house. They attack the ward. They climb into the book houses. The city fights as one body. Darien becomes the architect of defense, turning half-built structures into kill corridors. Joran becomes the spine of the line. Lysara defends the ward with fury and blade. Arath and Ilera protect the gathered memory inside the book houses. Sared holds the children, the wounded, and the soul of the city together. Vorath fights heroically, which makes him even more dangerous in the future, because a city remembers who stood firm in the night. And Salian and Solvaren discover that the unpurged weaken under harmonic coherence. The lawful relation of the world hurts them. True life abrades false life. At the height of the battle, the prepared processional lane becomes more than a path. It becomes a harmonic corridor. The work song, the basin stones, the memory objects, the lesser vein stations, and the gathered inheritance of the city all become part of the defense. The meaning of the city becomes a weapon. The lanes themselves begin choosing. The unpurged break. Their brood matrix is destroyed. Solvaren dies at dawn after helping destroy the hidden root of the false life. His death matters deeply. He was one of the first to understand that Thalerys was not evil, only hard. He taught the city how not to mistake a difficult world for a hostile one. After the Night of the Unpurged, the path is open, but defeating the enemy is not enough. The city must gather itself. This leads to one of the most beautiful sequences in the book, the gathering of memory. The founders realized that survival alone cannot awaken Thalerys. A world cannot be made human by water and atmosphere alone. Growth without inheritance is not civilization. So the whole city is called to bring forward what remains of mankind, not only official records, everything. Names of lost worlds, songs, seed packets, animal records, children drawings, burial customs, medical notes, worked family rites, unborn names, weather records, star maps, descriptions of extinct flowers, the first burial stone measures, the first child house signals, the first work song. This is one of the emotional cores of the entire book. The city gathers not only the memory of the dead empire, it gathers the first memory of itself. This is when the first ghetto begins to become more than a survival camp. It becomes an inheriting people. And the world seed requires exactly that, because the world seed is not data storage, it is not synthetic upload, it is not machine preservation, it carries living memory, pattern, essence, inheritance, the preserved resonant possibility of worlds and lives. To awaken Thalerys, the survivors need two sacred burdens. The first is the last antimatter ignition core of the Elder Age, the final old fire, the last technological sun preserved from the world seeding science of the past. The second is the world seed. The old fire can awaken the body of the planet, but fire alone would only create growth, water, air, plants, life, perhaps even beauty, but not a human world. For Thalerys to become the Blue Motherworld, the gathered inheritance of humanity must enter the awakening through living anchor. That anchor is Thalera. Before the descent, the great elders are named Malera, Salian, Lysara, Darien, Sir Thalera. They are not rulers in the ordinary sense. They are bearers. Each carries one essential part of civilization: law, books, custody, harmonics, flesh, labor, living witness, first attunement. Together, they descend toward the chamber of offering. They carry not symbols of power, but the real materials of civilization: a law leaf, the names of lost worlds, A primer page, the work song unborn names, burial measures, dust clothes, a surgeon blade turned downward, a market measure, a beam spike, the memory of the dead, the memory of children, the last old fire, the world seed. In the chamber beneath the black shelves, the old fire and the living seed are brought together. The antimatter core is seated beneath the cradle. The world seed is placed above it. The great elders form the circle. The inheritance is offered. But the chamber does not complete. It requires the anchor. Thalerys steps forward. She chooses. That matters. She is not thrown into sacrifice. She is not consumed by public demand. She chooses freely, knowing that the cost may take part of her beyond return. When she places her hands upon the seed, the old fire rises. The world body stirs. The gathered inheritance passes through her. She gives not information, but relation. Her name, her grief, her city, its children, its songs, its wounds, its hope. The seed takes the inheritance. The world recognizes the offering, and Thalerys awakens. The old fire is spent. There will be no second core. The final technological sun of the dead empire dies in the act of becoming a beginning. But Thalerys lives, changed. Part of her pattern enters the seed and the world memory. She does not become a machine copy. She does not become immortal in the false synthetic sense. She remains embodied, mortal-wounded, human. But the world now knows her. She becomes the first anchor of Thalerys. And then comes the first tide. Water runs through the black basins. Streams open in ancient channels. Mist rises, clouds form. First growth appears along the stone. The sky deepens. The world becomes blue. The Blue Motherworld is born, not as paradise, not as an instant utopia, but as a beginning purchased through law, blood, memory, and sacrifice. And that is why the ending is so powerful. The beauty does not erase suffering. The dead are still buried. The wounded still hurt. The city is still poor. The wrecked ships still stand. The law will still carry dangers into future ages. The severity of Vorath has not vanished. The roots of future darkness have already been planted beside the roots of future greatness. But the horizon has changed. The survivors are no longer merely enduring a barren refuge. They are standing at the shore of a living world. In the epilogue, Thalerys begins to understand what the chamber did to her. The world remembers her from within, not as stored consciousness, not as machine continuity, but as living pattern through world memory, through bloodline, through crisis. One day when the world has need, the line may carry that pattern forward again. This is the first return, not resurrection as technology, not immortality as escape, but return through living relation, through blood, through memory, through the lawful need of the world itself. That final idea connects this book directly to the larger mythic architecture of the Eterra Cycle. Thalerys is not only a founder, she becomes part of the deep pattern of the world. The Blue Motherworld will remember her. Her line will matter. Her sacrifice becomes not an ending, but a hidden law of return. So what is this book truly about? It is about survival. But survival is only the surface. It is about the difference between preservation and false continuance. It is about law and mercy. It is about the danger of purity. It is about memory as something living, not stored. It is about the cost of refusing cold salvation. It is about a people who have lost almost everything and must decide whether they will rebuild as humans or as something cleaner, harder, and less alive. The old machine age offered humanity a future without suffering, but that future required humanity to stop being fully human. Thalerys offers something harder: mortality, labor, grief, children, books, burials, stones, songs, bloated, mister, a world that does not save mankind completely, but allows mankind to remain true enough to begin again. That is the heart of the first architect of Eterra, the founding of Thalerys. It is the story of how a dead world began to live, But even more than that, it is the story of how humanity, after nearly surrendering itself to perfect salvation, chose the painful, fragile, luminous burden of remaining human. I am Christina, co-producer of the Eterra Cycle. Thank you for joining me for this look into the first architect of Eterra, the founding of Thalerys. And remember, not every rescue is salvation, not every future is worth the soul it asks from us, and sometimes the first act of building a world is remembering what must never be surrendered.